Enter madman, stage left. The audience rises and holds their breath. They let the vampires into their house, pretend they don't see when the teeth come out. Put a band-aid on their throat. No one wants to rock the boat, and no one wants to talk about it. You're not supposed to talk about it. The curtain rises and the players come out. Webs of lies spinning from their mouths. Stop looking, listen for a little while. Attention to the men behind the curtain. Just look away when you see the blood spurting down to a steady drip. I promise to leave you a little bit. I'll be back for another drink tomorrow. I love the taste of your terror and your sorrow bathing in your blood. It's never enough. On the face of all mankind, our numbers up and the dead won't sound. Go along to get along in the time by the siren song. The flames are empty and the crypts are cracking open. The world's upon you and you stand there frozen, waiting for the word. Stand in line and wait. Find out who is pulling. Just drink your poison, keep on laughing and drooling, eating your own flesh. The master always knows what's worldwide genocide. The overlords of hungry parasites. They point the finger and the eagles fly. Raining fire, children die. Starving plague, paralyzed. Pile of bodies rotting, covered in fire. But no one wants to talk about it. Strings, no more bowing to the master. I tried to run, but they only came faster. Now I stand my ground. I ain't backing down. Silver bullets in my pistol, in my holster. My will is strengthened and my confidence is bolstered. Don't test my resolve. Don't test my resolve.
Hello and welcome to the Iron Mountain Hour. It is Sunday, November the 27th, 2022, the Sunday after Thanksgiving. I want to thank you for joining us. My name is Cliff. I'm joined by Tim and Dustin as we go down the line here. Say hello in the chat like Sean did. Hello, Sean.
Hello.
Yeah, and tonight's subject I think is a very interesting one. I'm by no means a scholar on any of these subjects, but I've watched and read a lot of content on them over the years from a lot of different subjects or from a lot of different sources, and I think the two have kind of been building over the last 20 years or so, especially. I mean, Chariots of the Gods came out in when the early 70s.
70. I'm gonna guess 74.
Okay, I'd say you're right. I bet
70.
Alvin out there though is going to be like, no, it's in the 73, and then we're going to be like, take it, Alvin, you got us again. But it's good. It's good to have you with us, Alvin. We love having, especially if we do get something wrong. But maybe we don't know the answer to a lot of this stuff. This is a discussion channel. It's not a research channel. Hello, B.
And we get to do meme stats about aliens.
Yes. And Dustin, I bet, could make his hair do the thing if that was what he wanted. Yeah. How much time do you think Giorgio Tsoukalos spends before he gets on screen with his hair like that?
Fun fact: when I had short hair, a long time ago, I did glory spots for a while. So
nice.
They took about 45 minutes to do.
Okay. Hello, Dalton. Good to have you with us, brother. How's things in the liquor store? Hopefully you've not been back there since the day after or the day before Thanksgiving. Hopefully you've had a nice little vacation, but I know how that is. You got to go back to work. I've been fortunate enough to be off since Thursday, so had a nice little weekend.
I'm hungover as hell off of Wilbur's Killer Juice. Good Lord, y'all made that. It's sneaker. It's like sneaker liquor is what I'd call it.
Oh yeah, tell me the cheese was so good. It is good though. It does sneak up on you there. What were you drinking? The Mellow Moon or the? They got a couple other varieties, I think, too.
Whatever the Mellow Moon, the one they make the clear one.
Mellow
Thank
Moon.
God it was clear. God, if it came up flavored.
Oh
If it
yeah.
came up, I was in the line at Arby's at like 7:30. I was like, I gotta get something real greasy to put this down. And as soon as I got the bag, I was like, zoop, I got it from my car and started going from the highway. I was like, great.
Thanks, Phil. I feel like I must have gained a couple of pounds myself, man, because I've eaten. I'm tired, but I've got. Tim said he was hungover. I said I've got turkey hangover. I just, for some reason, just decided to have a big plate, probably about an hour and a half ago, and.
I wish I had some.
Yeah, I'm like,
leftovers
I'm tired because of crappy work schedule change this week.
We
the
were.
Wild Bluff
Gotta
Screamers in
work
the chat.
11
What's up,
days
man?
All week.
Are you second? Or is
Yeah.
it like 11 at night?
Well, say 11 a.m. to 8 p.m. I just got out of there like 2 hours ago.
For holidays? Or...
Just this week, it's stupid crap.
yeah.
They want me to train people because I know how to do shit right.
Yeah, that's the only thing about knowing how to do things right. They usually want you to show others. Either they want you to do everything or you to show everybody else how to do it.
Well, at least they're training people.
It's kind of
I would rather them send me somebody to teach than ask me to do everything.
they kind of do both.
Yeah.
Well, I've worked a lot of retail, and from experience, not all, most stores, their version of training is sticking a new person with someone who's done the job for like 2 months.
Yeah.
And for a week.
Let them have
one week, and that's it. Like, that's enough to train you to do something.
well, hell, with us normally it's like, hey, you get about 3 hours with someone, and that's all we can spare because we're behind.
Well, it's just you can't. That's not a good way to build a. I guess they just want to put bodies in there and hope it sorts itself out because it's corporation and they're dead in the heart. But like, you really do have to build a team because if the people aren't trained, it never gets done effectively. And you end up with weird situations like Dollar General and Subway where they think one person can run the whole place by themselves. It's like, what happens if they have to poop?
Yeah.
What happens, I don't know, if more than one customer shows up?
I run into that all the time, man. And you get like, they'll get a big line going or something and you go to the self-checkout or something to try to skip the line, but then somebody's already rung up an item and then left it. So they have to come over and scan it to get it off there, but they never get a chance to run over there, so you might as well just wait in the line. But yeah, they don't staff for what they have. Yeah.
And Dollar General's really bad for. Well, Subway was the one I thought was the most egregious because it's like there's so much for those, and it's always like it's always like a 50-year-old woman who looks exhausted, and it's like, well, like I don't know what they're paying you, but it's not worth it. But the Dollar General one confuses because you really trust people just to walk in and not take stuff? Because I don't know how many times I've gone to a Dollar General, there's a sign sitting on the register that says, be back in 5, and they come back drying their hands off. It's like, yeah, they had to poop.
Yeah.
Well, you lucky we don't have flash mobs here.
Yeah. Well, I mean, that's the way it should be. You should be able to go poop on your job, and one person should be able to run the store. But, you know, they put those, put the Dollar Generals in, you know, strategic locations, of course, to get as much traffic as possible. And I think they want one between you and the Walmart. And I think that's really a brilliant business model. You know, we'll give you almost a low price as Walmart, and you don't have to go in Walmart. We're a lot closer to you than Walmart. We just don't have as much selection. So, hell, I mean, it was a pretty bright idea. I think they're out of Goodlettsville, Tennessee. That's what all their packaging says. They may be a corporation out of Tennessee, but they dang sure employ a lot of Tennesseans. I think they're all over the country now. But yeah, you're right. Then they're not the only ones. Like you go into Walmart and there's like 1,000 people lined up and they have like 3 registers open, and they're trying to herd everybody through the self checks, and they have like 4 or 5 people herding people through the self checks, and for everybody who's got a couple of items, that might be fine. We got a big buggy full of stuff. I don't want to go through there. I feel like it's rude to even go through there myself. It's going to take me forever. And they ought to have somebody open to do that. But instead of having the people that are over there helping with the self-check come to the...
Well, the Dollar Generals don't have self-check.
Yeah.
That's one of the issues.
Yeah, some of
You
them
certainly can't make your own sandwich at a Subway.
Yeah, I think that's why they're using those self-checks. They want to train us out of existence, basically. Train us to put ourselves out of existence, to use the plastic, because a lot of them you can't use cash in. And... they don't require a cashier.
Walmart is trying to get. You don't think Walmart just wants to make as much money as possible, and they don't have to pay somebody?
Well, I think that's part of it. Yeah, it's like, why would they pay a cashier if you can ring it up yourself?
Mm-hmm.
One, it's like the World Economic Forum has told us the future doesn't need you, and I'm pretty sure Walmart is in on those meetings too when they're making their plans for how they're going to run their business in the future.
Yeah, but if there's no poor people, they can't buy anything. So it's a really weird business strategy. Like Walmart knows they're shutting themselves down if that's the case.
Well, I guess if, like you said, if they don't need as many people to run it, then there's less overhead, and if there are fewer people there, then they don't need to sell as much.
It's not worth it.
Yeah,
It collapse. It's nice. Any economist for a World Economic Forum, y'all are smart. It's not sustainable. I think it's going to be like the Jetsons. It's like you got people.
I don't think they really think it's like that. I think what they plan to do is pretty much an extreme version of what they tell us they plan to do, and that is they plan to use robots to do all the human work and then basically escape underground or some other version of that, whether it's in the high tower or whatever it may be. Escape somewhere while the rest of us undergo the results of what they've been putting in place over the last few years. They're going to avoid it all and then come back with, this is what they think anyway, that they're going to come back with robots to do all the work for them, and they're just going to reap the rewards. And hopefully by the time our generation reaches, the age where we would normally die, they will have figured out something to do with, regenerating telomeres so we don't age, or uploading us into a computer so they never have to die. This is what they have said. This is not me speculating. This is what people in the World Economic Forum and groups like it have, the transhumanist people, Ray Kurzweil and all those guys, Julian Huxley, Aldous Huxley, they've put this stuff out there. And I'm just pointing it out. I'm not saying that they will or won't succeed, but that's what they think. And
sounds really gay. And I mean, like, not in a homosexual way. I mean, like, any group of people, and yeah, I'm talking to y'all, any group of people that wants to sit around and think, how can we make things perfect? That's gay. You know, find a hobby, I don't know, become like sex addicts with people that are of age. Find some cocaine. Everybody on the World Economic Forum needs to have a lot of drugs in their system for you to sit around and go, how can we monetize water?
I think that might be a lot of their psyop, and is the whole they want you. This is again, if we follow their models, and they want you on a drug basically, pot will be fine. Big Pharma a lot of people know this. Big Pharma has invested heavily in big marijuana now.
It's called the McBud is what they refer to it at the private dispensaries. There's lots of when you go to, like, especially Colorado, you'll see where people have left pamphlets, because like you can't go to Colorado without smelling weed. It's just everywhere, and you'll see like pamphlets and stuff where people have made them up warning people about the era of the McBud, just kind of saying that yes, the weed is good, but you don't know what they've done to it.
Clone GMO weed.
Saying that maybe they're using... one of the things that they were talking about, too, was they found ways to kind of extract it, kind of like they've done with the D10 and stuff, where they make a distillate and then put it on other kinds of weeds. So they're doing something called dusting, where they make genetically modified keef, and then they put it on other weeds and stuff. And it's, I don't know, it's from what they described in the little pamphlets and stuff. There's almost nothing that I know about growing weed as it is. They're doing other things that the weed farmers that came before them aren't proud of. They're not happy about it. It's kind of the chicken people, how Tyson Chicken moved in and they bought all the chicken places out, and there was no way that the chicken people could say no that owned the pre-existing chicken farms, because they were like, oh, you're going to pay us more, but we have to use your chickens. But over the years, they started switching it to where, well, yeah, now you have to keep the chickens in the dark all the time because it makes the meat better. and now you have to pump them with this drug because it's going to give them these big, juicy, thick thighs. And over time, people started saying like they couldn't ethically do these chickens anymore, so they would just get out, and then Tyson would just buy the thing up and just keep doing it anyway. And that's what the farmers are saying that they're going to do to the marijuana industry, is they're letting people start these big dispensaries, but one by one they're just going to take them out, and then you'll have I guess what you'd have the same thing with like well, they've changed their name, but
GMO, it'll be Bill Gates' bud.
yeah, but what
In my
the big
view.
company that used to be at Monsanto?
Yeah,
They've
yeah.
changed their name now, but
Oh,
it's
have
like a Monsanto situation that's happening with marijuana.
Well, I'd say Monsanto's probably in the marijuana game. I don't
Better
know.
watch out, Wilbur. They're going to come Monsanto your moonshine when Appalachia gets too
Yeah,
popular.
they get up in the corn and the cane there.
Y'all better tell Tyler Childers to stop singing about that stuff. They're going to come McBud the moonshine.
Oh, don't McBud the moonshine.
Don't
now
McBud the moonshine,
that's a song
Tyler.
right there.
Stop singing about it.
That's all right. There's our third Iron Mountain Hour single. Don't McBud the moonshine. So remember that, guys. Tim came up with that one.
Don't McBud my moonshine.
Now,
Will you debut the new Stratosphere for that too?
I don't know. We might keep that one hidden. Till might do that for when we release the Iron Mountain Hour theme song, which again I have written. We don't have to get all of us together when we can go to Tim's house and record this thing.
I know, I live real far away.
I know.
My hair. Time to go here.
Well, let me look at that was our green room section where we just talk about whatever grinds our gears at the time or whatever we happen to be thinking about. But it's good to have you all in the chat, Dalton.
I'm saying this to be funny, but I'm also saying this truthful. This groom's not green, is it?
It is not.
Like you say green. I've heard you say that a couple times.
No, it's the
but I'm actually
it's the
colorblind.
segment at the beginning of the show where we talk about
Okay.
something other than the main topic at
I'm
hand.
pretty sure this is like a grayish color.
Hold on. You can.
Yeah, hold that in
Now we're in the green.
hold that in front of the camera there.
Now, yeah, but like, well, see these tiles, these over here aren't the same though. See
Yeah.
that's confusing.
Yeah, it's
That
got
actually looks
the
green to me though.
it's got the panel over there and then the
It's a
drywall over here.
very, I could see how you could say that has a green tinge to it.
Does it? Okay. Cool.
I can't.
I can see it. It's not, but I can see it. It's
Well,
in that really, really desaturated color. It's like it almost feels.
Do you think the dude from Ancient Aliens is into Static X at all?
Well, Wayne Static did have that kind of crazy hair like that, but his is more curly. So maybe,
Static's was like,
yeah.
he looked like the Slim Jim guy.
Well, y'all listen. We've in light of Graham Hancock coming out here lately with his show on Netflix. He's gone through. He really has. Having followed this guy and read him for about 10 years or so, he's really gone through a process of being ridiculed a whole lot to people starting to take him seriously. Mainstream archaeology, and some people are willing to entertain the ideas that he's had, but largely he's been regarded by mainstream archaeology as a pseudoscientist, even though he never claimed to be a scientist, and he often says so that he's a reporter and he's a journalist.
Investigative journalist.
Yeah, and that's how we ended up on this topic. Was he was a reporter for The Economist, and I think he was working in Australia or somewhere. I can't remember, but he came across some ancient structure that when he was looking at it and listening to the details of its archaeological history, he thought, well, this just doesn't make any sense. What would make a lot more sense is if blah, 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 blah. And so he started writing about this subject, and one of the things that he noticed was that a lot of ancient temples were lined up to the position of stars and the equinoxes and solstices. And a lot of these were, okay, if you're not familiar with the precession of the equinox, the North Pole of the Earth points at the North Pole of the United States. So I live in that's right. I live in a
Basically the
Americentric
same thing.
live in an
The world.
Americentric world. Well, the magnetic North Pole, it points to the north of the Earth, and over the years, as the Earth is spinning and spinning, it has a wobble to it. Now, if you spin a top on the table, that wobble happens really quick. But when you've got a giant, basically something spinning like a top as big as the Earth, that wobble takes some time to play out. In this case, I think it's about 42,600 years that it takes this top to play out. So during this time, the way that the zodiac signs appear in our sky are going to change, And once we get through that whole cycle, they'll be back where they were, the 42,000 years or whatever it is ago. So he noticed that when you take and you run an app on the sky or a computer program that reverses the stars and heavenly bodies pictures to what they would have looked like, using Newtonian physics, they can calculate, in the future what the orbits of these things are going to be, what the rotation of the Earth is going to be, what the rotation of the pole is going to be, where it's going to be pointed. They plug all this into a computer and they can run it back. It assumes consistency, but it's pretty much going to be right. The only thing that's going to make it inconsistent is a major shift in the Earth or one or another of the heavenly bodies. So, assuming everything goes the way it normally goes, these things should be pretty accurate. And he found that in a lot of these temples, when you go back about, over 10,000 years ago, before people should have been advanced enough to be able to build these kinds of structures, that these temples, that's when they line up with the heavenly bodies, whether it be Sirius, the dog star, whether it be the summer solstice, where it be another planet or constellation, or it wouldn't be a planet because they move constantly, but a constellation. These things lined up, like the Sphinx, for example, was supposed to have been, and it was supposed to have been built 2,500 years BC, but it has the erosion on it.
13,000, because the whole strip through there actually was like a rainforest or a tropical region before it turned desert.
And the last time it rained was when?
What threw them off was they were saying the Sphinx was around 15,000 years or something like that, which was, he keeps dating back to what they call the Younger Dryas, which is, I'm probably going to say that right, Younger Dryas.
No, that's how you say it.
So, but what they got to notice, and there was like pitting on the top of the Sphinx. It's only indicative for hard stone to get damaged like that with heavy rains.
Heavy rain for a long time.
They said it was like 30,000 years ago when it used to rain like that there.
They say that that the last time that it really rained like that would have been about 10,000 BC, but it could have been longer. Now they're talking about the Younger Dryas theory, but basically the Sphinx was also, I think Dustin was about to say this, but it was also lined up to point at, I think it was the winter solstice. It pointed directly at Leo rising, and it was in the shape of a line. And they say, like, probably many years later, perhaps even in 2500 BC, that's when people came along and busted, instead of repairing the lion's head, they made it into the pharaoh's head on the Sphinx. And, they did repair to the Sphinx over the years, and it appears to some archaeologists that they did around that time. Is it Robert Schoch that did the research, the geologist that did the research on the rainfall? I believe that's it. You can fact check me, but if you look up Robert Schoch and then rainfall erosion on the Sphinx, you'll be able to find that information.
West, there's a guy who recently died. There was an older dude that there was first, and he called in Robert Schoch to check it because he was like, "This ain't right." And when Robert Schoch got there, that's what really got him involved because he said it blew his mind. I'm gonna look that up real quick.
Okay.
Who the dead guy is, because sounds disrespectful. But
No.
I want to find out who's
This schmuck that's dead.
dead.
But I mean, they found that with other. I mean, if you look also at the pyramids, the common wisdom is that they were built around 2500 BC, and that they were a tomb for Khufu. Even though, if I'm not mistaken, nobody's ever been found buried in a pyramid where they say it's a burial chamber. Didn't they have? It seems like they have separate burial chambers. I could be wrong about that, but none of the Great Pyramid has had a body in it.
John Anthony West.
Okay, now I wasn't aware of that. So John Anthony West.
He was one of the. He was one. I think
he was
Rogan
one of
had
the
him on
first
his.
proponents.
Rogan got him on his podcast like one time. It was like a Skype call or something like that. But he's the one that kicked off the whole Sphinx craze. Like.
Okay.
So there you go.
Good deal. Well, I wasn't aware of that.
1979, when it grew some attention because a guy named Peter Green said that can't be right and wrote a book about how he was stupid or something. Wildly speculative is what Peter Green said. That was 1979, so we've been talking about the age of the Sphinx for quite a minute.
Yeah, and you really have to speculate to figure some of these things out, and that's kind of the view that Hancock takes, and it's kind of the view that I've always, even before I discovered anybody, like Hancock, or like I said, like discovered him, but before I came across anybody like that, even when I was watching this stuff about the pyramids, and as long as that Zahi Hawass guy was the head of the Antiquities Council over there, I never trusted anything they did, because they'd bring that guy out, and
I think he died too.
yeah, I think he did too. Somebody else is in charge over there now, but it's almost like they if they don't ever tell you the answers to any of the obvious questions that you'd have to this stuff, and they avoid answering when people do ask those questions. And if anybody comes up with anything that sounds, different from what they're saying, then they don't give them access to the sites, and they won't give anybody the opportunity to prove them wrong, and that's not science.
You think a lot of that just has to do with the country of Egypt not wanting to admit that their people got all this stuff wrong? I mean, like, wouldn't that be kind of insulting if, like, I don't know what we claim to fame around here, but if a bunch of outsiders kept coming in and getting it right, and you kept getting your own stuff wrong? There's nothing you could be. That's pretty bad to have your own history wrong, and people have to straighten it out. But I think that actually lends more evidence to the idea that Egypt, maybe even like Rome and a couple of those cultures that didn't really seem to understand some of the stuff they had. Like, it's almost like it was a borrowed civilization. That was kind of the hypothesis that a lot of people have made, is that big catastrophe survivors move in and do the best they can with technology they don't fully understand. And Egypt, not even knowing their own history, is pretty indicative of cultural amnesia.
I had you saying that made me think of it, and I can't find it right now, so I could be mistaken, but look it up if you want. I think Zahi Hawass, I think it was Edgar Casey's son, that's claimed that he went to Zahi Hawass and said, I know there's something in there that you're hiding from us, from the good of the people. My dad told me, thank you for what you're doing. I can't remember if it was on Coast to Coast or what, but so that's what Edgar Casey's son allegedly said to Zahi Hawass.
That they don't want people having.
But there's some secret in there that they're protecting or something.
Well, what's his face? Bob Lazar said that's where they got the UFOs from. He said they found them buried in Egypt. And he said,
I never heard that.
Yeah, that was one of the theories. They dug up like 9 of them out there or something.
Do you ever think it's interesting that, like, right after the first atomic bomb started dropping, that's when we suddenly started seeing all the reports that we know of the flying saucers? They were like 46 was the flying saucers where it was originally written in the Washington magazine there, and then 47 was the Roswell incident. And it's like, I don't know of any major reported UFO events. The Kentucky Hobgoblins happened right after that. I don't know of any major UFO sightings that happened before the testing of the atomic bomb, before they dropped the first atomic bombs on human beings. And I've heard people say that,
probably like the aliens, like they got those again.
Yeah, done to wipe them out
too. Like, maybe because if you look at
because there's that stuff with the history, like what was it, that one spot in India where they were digging down, and all of a sudden all those people got sick and died from radiation poisoning, and they're like, hey, there's like they found, like, deep down in the earth, there's like, this isn't nuclear explode, that's fallout.
Yeah, then they found a bunch of green glass over there too, and they're like, but they said, it was more than enough to be more than what you'd see from lightning strikes. That it was.
Yeah, and there's depleted uranium buried deep underground. That's the only way to do that is through, like, nuclear fission and stuff like that.
I think the UFOs only show up when we're going to heavy war. That's why they're depicted in all the Vedas and stuff.
Yeah, could be like people said, like, this is a simulation. What if we're a sentient world civilization, like Sid Meier's Civilization game that somebody else is playing, and every time we start getting to blow each other up, the kid hits reset, and the aliens come in, pew, 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 clean everything up, and then the simulation starts over. That reminds me of on the ancient astronauts theory. Okay, so we didn't really get into a whole lot of that. The ancient aliens.
Is the idea here that you want to say either or? Because I think they could be.
No, I just think those are the two main schools of thought. So, where does the truth lie? Do we ever have any way to find out the truth? What do you think about it? There's lots of different ways to look at it. And the ancient astronauts theory, or the Kentucky Hobgoblins. Yes, I did. That's right. That's what I said, Sean. If you watch the episode on the Man in Cave, I talked about that a little bit. But there was a sighting of a family saw a bunch of little metallic-looking men, they claimed, that were 3.5 feet tall or so, and they walked with their hands up, and they were outside of their house. There was an extended family altogether, about 11 people, and they shot at the goblins. The goblins were trying to get into the house, and when they shot them, it made like a ringing sound, and they'd fly off, but it didn't appear to damage them. And these people went to the police and reported it. And I don't remember if it's called the Kentucky Hobgoblins or not. Definitely, if you search the Kentucky Goblins UFO, you'll find it. They saw a craft outside of their house, they reported. And the police, at least, believed them very much. It also happened around 1948, and they said that these people didn't have a radio or television, so it would have been very hard for them to have heard, stories about Roswell or flying saucers, stuff like that, because we look back and we find it now, but it wasn't like everybody in the country just read the story of the flying saucers in that one paper. It was it took some time for that stuff to circulate, so a lot of people could have maybe seen it and acted accordingly, but then these people probably wouldn't have seen anything like that. And yeah, they're again, if you look it up, I don't remember all the specifics, but yeah, check it out there, Sean.
You would think
Wild Bluff Screamer says possibly time travelers. Yeah, that's one theory too.
That the UFOs are time travelers?
Yeah.
You think, well, it could be. I think my theory on it is I think it's tourists. I think we're interesting. I don't think we're that interesting. I think humans. Like, a bunch of, like, hairless monkey creatures that kind of kill each other all the time.
See what they do.
Like, that would be entertaining. Of course, maybe it's just like the ultimate reality show. That's what we've got down here. So
come see Earth.
the UFOs are actually just cameras, just trying to get a better view for the show. That's all they are. It's just drones trying to get good shots.
Yeah.
So when you start seeing UFOs, it doesn't mean they're trying to abduct you.
Means you're the star of the show.
It means you got an episode, yo.
I would be careful. Something probably bad is going to happen to you if they're paying that close of attention to you.
I need a new story arc. I've never seen one.
Dude, I did see, and one of the things that a lot of these pyramids and stuff like this seem to symbolize to Hancock and a lot of the other researchers that he works with, because he doesn't just come up with these ideas on his own. But one of these things that the art on a lot of these pyramids, temples, ancient structures seem to symbolize is that there was at one time a cataclysm of sorts, maybe comets hitting. That's what they end up coming to theorize in their ancient astronauts or ancient apocalypse. Right? Yeah, that's what it's called. Ancient Apocalypse show that's on Netflix right now. Is that the reason all these places have this similar art all over the earth? They all have similar stories, whether you go down to Pumapuku, Chichen Itza, whether you go to Teotihuacan, whether you go over even all the way to Turkey or the island of Malta, you come across these structures that have stories that appear to depict, or they're markings and artwork and ancient stories in some cases that appear to be a person comes, often with a beard, from
And a bag.
Yeah, from a advanced culture of some sort, arrives on usually a boat with no paddles, sometimes a flying craft, and they teach them the secrets of farming, where these were hunter-gatherer cultures that all of a sudden you ask their old culture when they decided to start farming and stuff, they say, well, what's when our God, whether it's Quetzalcoatl or whoever it is, depending on what part of the earth you're in, he always brings you the knowledge of farming and astronomy. And these old cultures, are supposed to be hunter and gatherer cultures from 10,000 years BC and greater. The Younger Dryas period ended, I think, 11,600 BC. So that's when the cultures or the societies were starting to build back up. They say is within 1,000 years after that. The idea is that some people were part of a technological society, which Atlantis was probably part of, and it was destroyed by a cataclysmic event, probably meteors or pieces of a comet going down onto the North Pole, and it was melting the polar ice cap, which caused huge worldwide flooding, because these were, that's why there's no geological record of it, because it just busted the ice and melted it, and that was the end of the Younger Dryas period cataclysm that basically ended us with the world we got today. It wiped out the technological society, and there were some survivors of that technological society which passed some of their knowledge on to the hunter-gathering tribes and civilizations that survived, and tried to pass this wisdom on to them, with also, they think, a warning that when we reach the certain period in the precession of the equinoxes, and actually where we are right now, we'll be re-entering a period where we go through the comet material from the Taurid meteor shower, which could, in their view, cause another cataclysm. So that's kind of a nutshell of a very long argument. I hope I wasn't too boring with it. I tried to get to the main points. And then the ancient astronauts theory is that the reason these people were able to build these temples and know this science is because aliens showed up and showed them that. Is the long and short of it. Basically, they learned construction techniques, farming, all kinds of advanced stuff that hunter-gatherers shouldn't have the capacity to learn without taking a long time. It doesn't seem like something that should just boom happen, and they're doing it all over the world when they weren't doing it before. You had 250,000 years almost of what are they called? Homo sapiens being on the earth. What are the odds that they just suddenly all start making these things at the same time? One side would argue that they had visitors show up from another world, another dimension, another time that showed them these things. Another side would argue that there was already a civilization in place there, but it's mostly been destroyed because it lived on the coastal, the coastal sites and on the islands in the middle of the ocean, the prime real estate basically. And that when this cataclysm happened and destroyed the ice caps, it flooded the earth with sea water. It rose the level up. It created, crazy erosion, basically destroyed all remnants of the civilization. And if you've seen that show on History Channel, The Life After People, I think it is, or what is it called? You know what I'm talking about?
I haven't watched it.
I haven't seen it, but it's something along that line.
Yeah, there's a show on the History Channel that imagines what the world would be like, and they have...
not history. Strangely enough. It's the Future Channel. Let's speculate.
Yeah, they do that a lot. But they have... one of the things I found interesting was that they had some sort of scientist or another on there, and he was talking about how basically we build all our structures with concrete and steel, and that's one of the reasons the old world built with stone, is because it's not subject to the same kind of erosion and oxidation that concrete and steel is, and that really without people to maintain concrete and steel, it's going to be gone in a matter of centuries.
It disintegrates. You can see that.
Yeah.
Any major city you go to, just watch the bridge just fall into the river over like a 20-year period.
Yeah, and he said all traces of it would be destroyed by nature with nobody there to maintain it. It would be a matter of centuries till you couldn't see a difference, and then it'd be over thousands of years. You'd never be able to tell it was there because
there's a channel, I think it's called Wise Up on YouTube, and this isn't an endorsement, but he points out some pretty interesting stuff. He thinks that a lot of these old civilizations, there was a period of the real stone stuff that you see, and then there was a period where they stopped using it, and that we're conflating the two things as one. That you've got ancient sites, and then you've got sites that we built just like we build our modern stuff, and then after a cataclysm or whatever, all the shit that's been on top of them made it look the same as this other stuff. And he points out how all these structures that they think are mounds and stuff are actually just collapsed rebar from and he pointed all these things look like perfect grid patterns. And he's like, actually, if you just take this out, you can see where that went away, and this isn't like a grid. It's like where the rebar decayed into itself. It's pretty interesting.
It wasn't a pyramid. It was.
He's saying like you've got pyramids, and then you've got this other stuff that looks like megalithic structures that's built the same way we build our stuff, and it wasn't good. And in the collapse of it, that they're conflating the two together, and some of it makes sense. I don't agree with some of it because some people, as happens with about every subject, copycats see it and they go, "Oh, I want to do what he's doing," without knowing what the hell he's talking about, and they start saying like really, really weird, crazy stuff that makes the whole area of investigation look stupid.
Yeah, you see a lot of that. Yeah, and well, that's why I like to preface this as, we're not scientists, we're not archaeologists, we're not anthropologists, although I did take Anthropology 101 and got an A in it. I think I got a 96 in it. Really did good at that class. It was my favorite class.
I got anthropology and sociology A's.
But
Hurricane Katrina for half.
I'm just very interested in it, really. It's not that I am an expert in. It's just something I like talking about, something I like looking at, and something I've been following for years. And it would appear that the two schools of thought, which even when I was watching Ancient Aliens, I watched it for several years on History Channel because they did have some very good information on there when they first started out. And then they started...
Even if you don't like the aliens, I like the
history. Yeah.
So...
And you I always thought, even when they were having people on there to talk about aliens, I said this does not necessarily mean, what if the people, what if they are under the earth right now? What if the people are under the sea? What if it was, just human beings who lived then and who may even still live here? Who knows? As much of the planet has been has not been explored. There's a fair chance of that. I don't know about a fair, but there's a chance of it. And there's also the chance that these ancient civilizations were running into more technically advanced humans. And then the theory of the ancient apocalypse suggests that very little of the technology survived, but the survivors, you can imagine what might be left of, if the government had to retreat to Cheyenne Mountain, or something like that, because in the event of a big cataclysm, and, the government was the only thing that made it out. You can imagine
that's scary.
What them trying to pass knowledge on to the future might be like. You know what I mean? I mean, there would not be...
What if the bearded guys with the bags were just like the government's re-civilization crew? All right, guys, let's get our civilization back together.
it could be.
Klaus Schwab comes walking out all young looking. We got to eat some babies. He's been alive this whole time. They've been working for 25,000 years to put the World Economic Forum back together.
It's like no wonder some of them are they want to be worshipped as gods.
Yeah. Yeah, that could be. Maybe they are the descendants of those people and they've been passing down that knowledge, and that's the thing that they're trying to hide. And that may be why that Graham Hancock has run into such a hard time with all this information. But now it is on Netflix, like Tim said. You can't really claim it's suppressed information anymore. So let's see what happens with it. But it does seem like mainstream archaeology and academia in general were basically not wanting to have this discussion. All they would pshaw pseudoscience and then not address any of the things like that's how they get around the Sphinx erosion theory. Is we're not going to entertain that theory, and we're not going to talk about it, and we don't have to because we're the ones in charge of it. And like when Graham Hancock was trying to visit, he was doing a section on Serpent Mound for the Ancient Apocalypse series on Netflix. Initially, Serpent Mound, they said, yes, we'd love to have Netflix come in and film something. And then they found out that Graham Hancock was involved, and they looked into who Graham Hancock was and said, no, we don't want to have you come over here and film. So they had to include, other people's drone footage and, had talk about somebody else, from somebody else's, perspective on their research. But they still, to me, it didn't do anything but make them look like, well, why would you not?
Streisand effect. Right
Yeah, exactly.
Don't let that guy look into it, and everybody looks into it instead.
Yeah, exactly.
A whole Eddie Bravo world. Just imagine it.
And I had that's a whole other episode. But I think this would also play into some of the out of place artifacts that people like Alvin and Sean and I think Spill the Tea we're talking about, where you find devices that shouldn't have existed, according to our perception and our latest archaeological findings of what society's technology must have been at a given time. They should not have been able to produce certain items and artifacts, yet here they are. And using our best dating techniques, we can tell that they're far too old for people to have made with the technology that we think that they had at that time.
You think some of it's also like, with the out of place architecture, it's not even like it's impressive. It's like, why is it there?
Mm-hmm.
Like that's like the Baghdad battery is not necessarily like it's impressive technology. It's like, why is there one battery? Like, what did they plug it up?
What were they powering with it is the interesting question. Yeah.
It makes you kind of think of the hieroglyphics of the dudes with the giant light bulb.
Mm-hmm.
It's like, how do you explain that one if that's not a giant light bulb?
I'd say that's what the Baghdad batteries were for, and that's probably what that was. They probably collected a cow fart and wrapped it up in a wire and used the Baghdad battery to light it up. But yeah, there's a lot of ways that they could have made electric light, if they had the knowledge, and some people say that they did, and
it makes sense that they would. Those big the big stone buildings would be so dark that even the flame wouldn't.
And there weren't torch marks.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. Like, and they're like the inside they're painted.
In them, you wouldn't really be able to be in them for long because they would eat all the oxygen.
Yeah.
Yeah, and the inside of those buildings used to be painted. Mm-hmm. And like, how would they paint and they try to
Paint by torchlight,
we've got this copper plate that barely reflects the sun, and we aim it at this other one, and by the time 42 copper plates get together, you can see magically like it's Indiana Jones. It all just lines up.
Yeah,
It's like that would take more
have you-
architecture and genius than figuring out electricity.
Have you seen when they did that too? They barely have any light from doing that, and I guess it's possible. But some of those, you can still see the paintings on some of those tombs and temples over there in Egypt, and they're incredible, incredibly colorful, just beautiful. And to think that those hieroglyphics are, that a culture that created those was not, and has the mythology that culture has, was not passing along something of great value. Because a lot of times this is one of the things that archaeology tends to do, is ignore mythology, and if they hear about something, whatever, remember, it's like in Indiana Jones, where he's like, nice fairy tale, when they hear about an artifact that's mentioned in a myth, like the very mention of a mythological figure or item, it's enough to make mainstream archaeology thumb their nose at it. And they miss out, I think, on a lot of important information if they're ignoring mythology. Because mythology, we got to think, this is a lot of times comes from cultures before they had the ability to write things down. A lot of things where information was passed from one generation to another. And what's the best way to do that? And that's a story. And even if the original person who's told the stories of, the Greek gods of Zeus and the Roman gods, even if these people, didn't include the whole thing about God, even if they were telling a factual story, eventually I feel like that's going to get added to it as people tell the story and remember it. And I think mythology is an important way to pass down information from generation to generation. And that people always have believed it's true too, right? And we think, oh, well, they must have just been, had a vivid imagination. Well, maybe that's the case, but maybe there were real life allegories for these figures that they called gods.
Or we've done all this before, and we realized that something bad was going to happen, and we either went down and did the earth, or we flew way up in the air. Everything went.
That's a possibility
too. The
too.
Wally robots down. Go woo! Oh, we see some feral people. Let's go give them a bag of magic tricks and teach them how to light fires and stuff.
Yeah.
And we need these people to know how to do that to build our society, so we can come back down and be kings.
Back down, yeah.
Wild Bluff Screamers.
Yeah.
I'm up for that. I want an absurdist reality.
And see, well, that's why I like to talk about this stuff, because that's a whole other level from where most people are taking it. Is, what if both of these things are right? People just didn't understand what they're saying.
The most likely scenario is they're both right, and the aliens are just us. And, even like the UFOs and stuff are probably just us,
Yep. You make a good point that it could be like Wall-E, and if for anybody who's not familiar in that movie, Wall-E's a robot who's used to clean up the Earth because humans have trashed it, and they've flown off into a space station, and they send back a probe to check and see if there's any life, and when they do, they're all supposed to come back. So
what is that little?
Even though hint, they've suppressed that information so they didn't come back.
Yeah, that's true. That's true. They put that in the movie too. Yeah, the people in charge didn't want to bring people back to the Earth, even though they could have.
Well, they're robots. It's like the robots knew better.
Was that what happened?
Yeah, like at the one that's trying to keep it all a secret is his butler robot that doesn't want him looking at anything. He's like, no, right. Captain, just keep being fat and looking at the screen.
Yeah, that's right.
Here.
They were programmed by a human, I think, back in the day to do that. But yeah, the robots were the ones being used.
Yeah, it's like we're just gonna leave the Earth alone. We're just gonna keep on this ship. Yeah. You guys can stay cruising for all eternity because you damage everything you touch. Like with the message, I think people don't understand the implications that most of the people that make media for you to consume would think the world would be better without us.
Well, I don't know if they think that or not, because although I agree with that, I think a lot of them do. But in Wall-E, though, the whole point is, if you're just laying around consuming and doing nothing but consuming and being lazy and not building anything and not doing anything, you're missing the whole point of being human. And basically in this movie, the robot, he enjoyed all the things that made us human, right? And the humans weren't actually enjoying any of those things, and he brought the.
Trying to make us okay with robots, y'all.
I'm trying to make you okay with
If
being
robots
human.
look like
Wally's coming.
Yeah.
if they were as cute as he, I'd be all right.
I think
I'm
that's
already
part of
getting
it
ads
too.
on my phone for an app for me to have an AI best friend.
Yeah.
That's how lonely people are. And it's going to be successful.
Oh yeah, it will. And I do think you're right, and I think Dustin's right too. I think that if robots were that cute, it'd be real
They're
easy for it to be your best friend. And like you said, it's priming us to be ready for robots because Elon Musk is coming out with a robot. They're coming out with personal robots, all kinds of
You could go to
jets
the
and
store
stuff going on.
right now, and for a very affordable rate, either buy you your own Brad Pitt or fill in the blank, Pam Anderson, Chris Farley, whatever you want to bang, most people would actually just go do that.
No, you can do that right now. It's going to cost you several $1,000s.
But I mean,
for
not like those, not like a sex doll where it looks like it, but I'm talking about like when that thing.
Fully realistic
That's what I'm saying. When that
androids.
thing is walking around like a Stepford housewife, or like a hunky husband or something like that.
Yeah.
Like people are going to do that. Like,
Well, I think they will, but I think the people who don't want to be humans, that's a perfectly good way for them to weed themselves out. It's like that Futurama episodes where it's like, don't date robots. You remember that? It's like showing where people are having sex with robots and not procreating, so the species is going extinct. Well, if that's what you would rather do, then you're not. I don't think you're a real human. If you'd rather just bang a robot all day, even if it is your fantasy person. I mean, if that's what you choose to do, and you choose to eliminate yourself from the gene pool in that way, then
that wasn't a Star Wars movie.
here's your Darwin Award.
One of the more recent Star Wars movie. I can't remember which character it was, but it was whoever. It was in the Solo movie. So Lando. I'm pretty sure they turned him on. Young Lando was a robosexual. I'm pretty sure he's banging this big, weird, big-headed robot. Looking. It's like, where? What's he do with it?
Spill, your uncle. She says her uncle built a house.
Is a probe and thing.
It got real sparkly with it. Spill says her uncle built his house underground in Oregon, and he found Viking type artifacts and interesting pottery. A museum wanted to buy them. It didn't sell anything. Cool. Yeah, the Vikings kind of have been found all over the place, and they could be the big bearded guys that the other places ran into. They could have been moving in some sort of.
I think it was before them.
They could be copying them. They could have picked up. Some of the things from them. I think that if you go back into Viking lore, you hear, very similar mythology to a lot of the other ones in that, they were all powerful. What's it? I don't know, the whole Valhalla thing. I forget the guy's name. Anyway, Odin. Yeah. Odin.
I was actually just guessing.
No,
I want to say one of the gods.
No, that's what it was. But there's a similar mythology and all those things to kind of.
I think Odin's one of the most interesting gods because of the symbolism in it. It's like the symbolism for almost like how to get what you want in the world and be successful. Because if you look at he takes out one of his eyes himself, and then he sacrifices himself to himself. It's got all this weird symbolism in it because it's almost like pre-Christian symbolism, which is one of the reasons they were so easy to assimilate the Viking culture into the Christians.
Interesting. Did I ask good?
God, that sounds painful.
My dogs crush ice. I can't do it. They love it, man.
Like you're chewing on gravel. Beckley Tepe.
That's Gobekli Tepe, yeah. Let me show y'all on the screen
I like
here.
the meme. It's like about nerds. It's like, yeah, I'd like to have some chew on some aquarium gravel.
I love nerds.
Me too.
Won't you just marry one?
Maybe I will. Maybe I will, bro.
Me too. I can do it.
Here we go. Yeah, that's cool. I know, I'll get them where they can, though. I don't want bigger one. Capital One, I'm good.
All of adverts. Holy hell.
I don't think any of our viewers would mind if we used an ad blocker.
I do use an ad blocker.
I don't understand modern
Oh,
advertising.
I've got it on Chrome. That's
when
why.
they make it like irritating. I don't understand why yet. It's like you made me not want to buy your product, Lily Cloth, if I was going to buy, sweat it with the sun.
Yeah, when you're annoying with your advertising, it will make me actively root against you and refuse to buy you. But one of the things about Göbekli Tepe is it was one of a series of temples. See, they found a bunch of other ones, but the way it was oriented.
Let me see that cat shirt.
I want to see the
All right, you annoyed me with your advertisement, but I do want to see the cat shirt. Sometimes I stay inside because it's just two people out there.
Too peoply out there.
Yeah.
Had my patience tested. I'm negative. Wow.
With a grumpy cat.
And then you could be the shit show supervisor.
Well, Lily Cloth, your advertisements are the shit show, so you
Well,
already are.
I gotta say, they got us talking about him.
They did, yeah.
Pony up.
Yeah. We're going to start saying the episodes are brought to you by Lily Cloth, and then you'll pay us not to mention your name again. What the hell was that?
That's how.
Little girl saves giant. That has to be like Weekly World News, right?
Yeah, I think so. Science picker. Yeah. Giant
That's
creature
probably
in
like
forest.
something like
And then we got, what's his name? Grizzly Adams over here on the next one. So, yeah.
Zach Galifianakis with a wig on.
I'm gonna say that's fake advertisement. It's fake news. You're fake news.
How many of those? They said like 12 of these. And
How many
they're all
rings?
still
I don't know. There's several other ones still buried. They uncovered like a 3-ring structure in this one. Now, here's the weird thing about this one. This one was buried, and it has the snake motif like a lot of them do, and it also falls in with the idea of a visitor coming and bringing farming techniques. This was a hunter-gatherer society until around this time, which lines up right with the end of the Younger Dryas period, which is when this catastrophe was supposed to have happened.
Well, this one's buried on purpose.
Yes, and
That's the most interesting.
yeah, and I think they worked on it for over 1,000 years and then buried it. And so it was a project that took many lifetimes of their culture, and then they buried it. So they obviously wanted it to last. I mean, I can't.
Time capsule.
I can't figure. Yeah, I can't figure why they would have buried it otherwise.
Okay, or if indirectly they have the same gods of Egypt, because where they were cat and dog-headed people, and then they buried
Mine.
or they had a squirrel god.
Well, it looks like
Bury him, forget things.
it looks like they carved just all the animals that they knew of on just pillars is what it looks like. And one of the cool things about it, instead of them carving into it, they carved the pillar down and left like the lizards and stuff sticking out of the stone, which is not normally what they do in stone, because that would be way harder to do.
Yeah.
Makes me wonder if they didn't use some kind of erosion process like acids or something. You know how much easier that would be?
Or they had lasers.
Or they had lasers.
Yeah,
Maybe
or
1,000 years, how long these people live.
or there was a whole other kind of technology that developed in a different way, because you got to think about the development of technology happened because a certain sequence of events happened in a certain way. People found certain discoveries had access to other discoveries. What about Tesla? All his stuff was captured by the FBI. Some of his technology we use today, but most of it they captured and put away classified. And actually, Donald Trump's uncle, John Trump, was the FBI agent in charge of using that. So that started conspiracy theories that Donald Trump was
is an insider.
Yeah, well, that he was some kind of I don't know. They were saying that he knows about the secrets of the universe, and there's some of these Pepe guys that get pretty into their whole they get into their whole
theory.
God Emperor Trump thing a little too hard, but it does make for some good memes.
Well, there's a whole as much as I could rag on people who believe all the mythology behind Trump, there's just as much silly nonsense behind a lot of the of what the left believes.
Oh, absolutely, and I do want to do a show on the Pepe and Kekistan, because that would take a whole show to go through, and it's so fascinating.
Nest.
It's so fascinating, though. You don't have to believe any of it, or just the whole thing with the Chans and
the approach from what though, like, because I feel like when you start getting into like that whole territory, it's very multi-pronged what you would be able to focus on, and I honestly just would not want to focus on any negative things said towards people that hang out on Reddit and 4chan, because they have nothing better to do with.
Oh, I could
say something bad about it.
I could do it definitely without saying anything bad about anybody. It's a pretty easy thing to explain if you start from the beginning, and when we're talking about something that happened during the the run up to the 2016 election, and the connection of Donald Trump to an ancient god and 4chan and World of Warcraft. So it's a very interesting story, and it sounds crazy. And maybe it's making a lot of connections that aren't there, but either way, it's fascinating and very entertaining, and I think it'd be fun to bring to you.
Great example of what 4chan self-awarely calls with 2 L's there. I couldn't I opened my mind. I was calling like Hogan's Crows. 4chan calls it schizo posting.
Yeah.
And I really think a lot.
Okay, well, I'll
unintentional pattern connecting that goes with schizophrenia is what a lot of that actually is.
Well, I'll grant you that's definitely a possibility, but I will grant you. I mean, you'll have to grant me that some of the things are. I mean, they defy coincidence. Even if they are coincidence, they would seemingly defy coincidence. And for instance, the post on 4chan where they were like, you don't know what number your post is going to be, right? And the number of posts that this guy painted, he was part of this whole conversation where they were talking about Trump is going to be president, and he's like, Donald Trump will be the next president. He posted, and it pops up number 7777777 on, and they're saying, oh, that's another in this long. Okay, so the likelihood of that happening on that post, because it could be any number, pops up when he says that.
Unless the CIA bought 4chan.
Yes, that's possible too. If it's truly not random.
They ruined that side.
Yeah, the Wild Bluff Screamer says it's called loose association. Yeah, well, but I'll show you. It's fascinating. I mean, I'm not saying I believe that.
I'm not against the idea of talking about the history, because it is for people that don't know about that little sub pocket. It's not little at all. I say that.
Oh no, you go to the Donald. You go to the Donald.win and you'll see all these guys.
There's such a pre-Donald Trump era though that goes to all those websites, and it's almost like, here's what I think. You're
talking about 4chan in general.
I'm talking about because there's other. When I talk about I call them just the threads, because even though you have like people that only hang out on like a 4chan, and you have people who are just Redditors, most people back in the day, pre-balkanization of the social media sites, they went to all of them. Like, you might go post something on 4chan, or you wouldn't post, you go read something horrible on 4chan, then you go over to 9gag to feel better about yourself, and then you go learn something weird on Reddit, and
you go to 11chan to get the computer aids.
Yeah, there's just, you got an 8, I mean, like, there's just a lot of different, but at some point in time, they all kind of went to war or something. And I don't even think anybody on 4chan anymore was the original people. I swear, I think that whole site's nothing but bots now.
It could be. Yeah, there's a theory that a large part of the internet is populated by bots, including a large part of finance internet. Yeah, that's definitely a possibility too. Wild Bluff Screamer said it's called loose association. Yeah, and these there are some of these things that are loosely associated, and there's others that are, like I said, they have to be coincidence. I mean, but unless you believe in ancient Egyptian frog gods.
Well, the frog, you know where that came from, right? Like the image of the frog that they used.
Pepe the Frog? Yeah, the comic guy.
Yeah, but like, so imagine how that would have to line up for them to start using a frog that many years in advance, and they only started and the guy didn't even want using it. Like, he killed the character off to make him try to start using it.
He finally realized that he could make money off of it and brought it back, and now he's making money off of it and embracing it.
Well, he supports racism, then, doesn't he?
I don't think he does, but it's his prerogative to be able to make that art and sell it. So he doesn't support it being used in that way. He never did. That's why he killed it.
It was like a web series, and people started using the frog out of it because of the crying and stuff. Like memes in general, just the history behind them are so funny. But like, I really think Donald Trump's team sit there and studied those things, like we're studying this stuff. I think they sat there and they studied meme culture and the threads and stuff. Probably 10 years before Donald Trump ran for president is what they did, because they understood the platforms way, way too well.
Interesting. You may be right. Yeah, they were definitely
and stuff. If you don't understand it, it's not because you don't get the meme. You're not in that culture.
You also saw though a lot of memers. You had your guys like, what's his name? Gosh, I can't remember his name. He got kicked off of YouTube. You had guys like Ping Trip and not Count Dankula, but shoot, who was he? The guy who made the meme of CNN being the little black baby and the white baby chased it down, and they said like he was committing a hate crime on it or something, and it was really chasing him to give him a hug or whatever. But it was basically showing that CNN uses fake news and tries to promote racism to prevent fake news. I can't remember the guy's name because it's been so long since he's been on YouTube, but he used to make a lot of good parody movies or parody videos. But a lot of those guys came out and were Trump supporters, and a lot of the memers from those days on 4chan were Trump supporters, so it kind of fed right into it. But that's not what we came to talk about tonight, but we'll get on to that another night. I really think it'd be interesting to discuss, and especially in light of Trump announcing his candidacy. And in 2020, he really failed to capture, even though he did get more votes than he did in 2016, he failed to capture that magic that he captured. It was basically like catching lightning bottle of,
You talking about the second run?
No, the first run in 2016 when he won, even when he ran again, he didn't capture that meme magic basically that was a big factor, I think, in him winning.
That, or you think it was all the other stuff that was going on at the time?
Oh, I think it was plenty of other things, but I just think that he didn't. I'm not saying that's why he lost, but I'm just saying he didn't seem to capture the internet meme magic to where there was a bunch of hilarious memes that were made by, the internet meme machine on basically the Donald Trump side of things, but they made memes that normies saw and could identify with, and that was one of the reasons they were so successful. And you didn't really see, well, no, that's why they took dude off the internet. I wish I could think of his damn name.
There's a lot of people that made those memes and stuff just to think what people don't get about. It's called shit posting for people that don't know.
Yeah.
Most people do. Most of the memes that you see were made by people who believe that they just wanted to make their friends mad.
Yeah.
Like, me putting, like, I don't know, it'd be like me making fun of anybody. I don't like any of them, but like a lot of people that were making Donald Trump memes to piss people off didn't like Trump. They just knew how bad it would make their friends flip out, so they would make a Trump meme, and then the right would grab it. And it was just so, I almost think like Trump was just less entertaining than Biden was. Because he was he's been more entertaining. It's like almost like unintentionally a comedian.
Yeah.
Where it's like running a professional comedian up against a lolcow. Which one's funnier? And it's almost like people would rather watch this guy fall down the stairs than watch Trump dance funny.
Gosh, if anybody can think of that video meme Smith, I would really appreciate if you give me that guy. That guy's name. It's going to drive me crazy. But he got kicked off off of YouTube in the 2020 campaign, and so I felt like they were trying to deny Trump from being able to capture that meme magic. So Sean says we're off subject. Yes. Yeah, we are. We're looking at what we're going to get into again, Sean. I think it'll be an interesting episode because it does relate to ancient frog gods, as is the subject of our story tonight.
What is
which was tied to ancient snake gods all over the world.
Well, we'll talk right back in right here. Somebody mentioned time travelers earlier. They kept saying that some of the they say Trump's a time traveler, and then we find out Trump's an FBI agent, or wasn't an FBI, his dad was an FBI agent, so he's an insider after all. We always thought he was a real estate mogul. And what if none of it's real? That's my re-interjectory back into the aliens. What if the aliens being introduced is just so people don't know that we're as old as...
That's honestly what I always felt like it was, is why. But I don't know, though. Eric Von Daniken, when he came out with that book, he was really argued with and chased out of, polite circles. But I feel like that's because he was bringing the story to light, even if he was, even if he was not exactly right on what the information is. He's saying, hey, look at this stuff. This does not jive with, modern archaeological data, but that's still what the answer that they come to. But in any case, he managed to get his book out there, The Chariots of the Gods, and he managed to get his videos and his talks out there, and a lot of people have seen him and heard about him. A lot of people built off his work, but they all go under the assumption that these were aliens. So once that started propagating, I'm sure if that's not the case, then the powers were trying to hide that it was ancient humans. And that's just as well, because this information's getting out of there. Might as well push them towards aliens and beings from other planets or dimensions rather than, actually allow them to discover whatever truth it is, whether it's that there were human beings here before, that human beings were, like I said, a lot of people on the ancient aliens theories will push the idea that perhaps humans were genetically created by visitors. But
AKA, they got down here, didn't have anything to bang, so they started banging the monkeys, and here we are.
or that you hear the story of the Nephilim, being the sons of the the angels that found the Watchers, and they found the daughters beautiful and created their created sons with them. But what if they didn't? What if that was just a metaphor? What if they didn't really bang the daughters? They just had some sort of genetic experimentation to
I think they banged the daughters.
make some better.
I mean, I don't want to go back to 4chan, but people will have sex with everything. So
Oh yeah, there you went.
I mean, I really think that's what like ancient aliens come down. And they go, "Hey, who wants to be the first to fuck one of the monkeys?" And I think they just started banging the women, and out we popped.
Yeah, I guess that's possible. But
You gonna tell me any species of anything goes to another planet? They're banging something.
well, I mean, look at Kirk with the blue women, so you could be on to something.
Yeah, dude.
But would you
literally
not?
ended his entire. He was going to go betray all humans to get Blue Creature Tang.
And the blue creature wasn't even that hot. I mean, she's alright, but
Maybe he's one of those Smurf people.
maybe he is. Maybe he was a Smurfer. Is there a Smurfer culture out there?
Yes, there is. You want me to ruin the show?
Yes, let's go off subject again, please.
No, you really don't want to do that. Like, it gets real weird real quick.
Oh, okay. Well, maybe not for YouTube.
I mean, the internet culture in general, I really think would be a good series for us to do, just because it really explains a lot about our reality. It builds a lot of the cultures that people don't notice. Like, for example, Graham Hancock's thing on Netflix. I've not watched a bunch of it, but it looks like they've made his discussions that he did on his own YouTube series and his talks on Joe Rogan's podcast and stuff, and they just made it nicer looking.
Yeah,
And they made
that's
it
pretty
more
much what they
digestible
did.
for people. They came right out of the gate with some weird stuff though. Like, I don't know why he wants to talk about the Atlantis, but he goes all the way to the Caribbean and then does a whole episode down in like the Bahamas, which is where he even admits that Atlantis isn't. So I don't know why they chose to do some of the.
Well, the
why they do some of the
reason
show way.
that he goes that is he shows that this is another place where, because he's talking about the Bimini Road in that
Yeah.
section, and these are all places that he has been to. If you've read his books over the years or watched his stuff, it's all places that he's researched for other reasons, and then ended up finding these things about him. And my wife watches this Nautilus show where it's on YouTube as they live stream when they go underwater with the submarine, and they mostly look at geological features and sea life that's under there. And they happened to come across what looked like a golden paved road, and then they went off the air for a little while, and then they came back and they never said anything else about it again. And I don't know if you can find the show or not. We watched it live, and they were like, "Holy crap, this is amazing!" And then you'd think they would follow up on that, but then we didn't see them for a little while, and then they didn't say anything else about it, which I thought was pretty interesting. But there's a structure like that in Bimini down there off the coast of near in the Caribbean. So Dustin, you're fading fast, Sean says. Mm-hmm. Yeah, he had to work late. He's on a different work schedule today, so he's kind of hanging in there. But yeah, they find these structures all over the world that appear to have this same story of a visitor coming in in some way magical craft or ship of some sort, and teaching the people to farm and do astronomy and advanced mathematics and in some cases languages. So.
This makes you wonder why, because they don't want people looking at like the Bimini Road, for example. They didn't like that at first. There's places down in like Greece. I want to say it's off like the coast of Greece and places, and they won't let people go dive and look down there either. So it's just real. There's countries that are real open to it, and there's countries that aren't. Like the only thing that keeps people in Mexico, for example, you can take a cruise. It's real cheap and go see a lot of ancient structures for almost no money. And but they're real open about it. Like the tour guides are real open about all the pyramids and stuff. They're like, hey, we just don't have any money. So if you want to dig up a pyramid, you throw some money around, and Mexico will dig up anything that you will throw money at. But other countries.
And there's apparently a lot of them underground and all over the place.
Oh yeah. Mexico's flat. And the lady down in Belize even told, she said, anytime you see a hill in South America, 90% chance it's an ancient structure because we just don't have hills down there. And they're everywhere. When you get up on top of, we went to one in Belize, and once you go on top of it, you're like, oh my Lord, and they're just hills everywhere. And you're like, all these used to be big buildings. This dum-dum.
Yeah, sorry. Keep talking.
No. Go put some focus on it. That's so stupid. Like,
Also, to reply to Sean, it's like, I only live like 5 minutes away, so.
So this.
oh wait, I'm
Don't
gonna
have
give
to
him
worry
a
about
line
me
of.
passing out.
I'm gonna give him a line of some Carter County crystal. He's gonna start hopping up like the ball screamer.
He's gonna scrape the shavings off his Doster Nuff lid. They ran her out of here for dancing on it.
She was probably shooting a TikTok.
She was. They gave us a copyright, not a copyright strike, but they
Claim.
a copyright claim on our video for the one the other day where we showed that PBS video and we kept it quarter screen.
The what, PBS?
Yeah, it was a PBS video.
Oh, PBS.
Yeah,
you
they
fucking
kept
with
it
the
quarter
government.
screen. So yeah,
Take
whatever.
PBS
I'm
stuff
not
away
worried
from
about
it.
it.
Beats his coin.
Public, damn it.
Yeah,
The
they come.
public can't use it.
It comes from our tax money, and then
Yep. Fair use.
it funds them, and they get to spend our tax money to go and make this film, which is granted. I like a lot of the films that they put out, and some of the stuff they do is pretty good, but like, shouldn't everybody have access to it for free, and the whole thing be fair use since we all contributed to making it? I
I
would
want to see
think.
her
Brought
TikTok
to you
dance. How
by
stupid it
viewers
was.
like you. Even
Let's
though you
see.
can't use it.
That's an epidemic of narcissism right there.
I'll see if I can find that. I think there is the dance video from somebody taking it. I don't know if they show it from her perspective or not.
Crazy thing about Chichen Itza. Going to Graham Hancock's, he was talking about a lot of the ancient structures. You started with the tiny pyramid, and instead of building somewhere else, they just built a bigger one on top of it. And ancient sites all across the world you can find where they keep building on top of themselves. And when we went and we saw this big ass thing. There's a map next to it. It's like a placard, and it shows that underneath all of these pyramids, there's a whole other city that looks exactly like it. It just has dirt on it, and they built the exact same city on top of it for some reason.
Yeah, one of the things in one of the early episodes of Ancient Apocalypse is they showed a pyramid that had 4 smaller pyramids built under it. They'd built up, each time, and they don't know how old the one in the middle might be because the one on the top is like a few several hundred years old, and then there appears to be another layer that's several hundred years older than that. And it appears that they've done that all over the world. When they come across these ancient structures, they build on top of them, try to recreate them, or try to make their own version of it on the old structure.
And to connect it to modern times, they were obsessed with ball games. You notice that? How like all cultures are obsessed with the sport.
Yeah.
Theirs was it almost looks like a ravine, like 2 solid walls, and there's these, looks like a big stone, probably about the size of your lot up there, maybe a little bit bigger, and they played a version of soccer where they would try to get this big rubber ball to go through the hoop.
With their elbows.
Hit it with their elbows and their hips. The only reason I even know what the ball was made out of is because there's some, what do they call them? Sinestas, or I don't speak Spanish, I'm horrible at it. The big hole where they get their water out of the ground. Caves with water in them. They found one of those nearby that, I guess the equivalent of like kicking your soccer ball in the wrong spot. They found 2 of them. They found 2 of them down the side of it where they're preserved.
Then they say it played to the death, huh?
Well, it was whoever won, they killed the team leader.
Oh,
Like,
yeah,
so
that's
it was
right.
like a privilege to win, and then you died at the end. That was part of the way, I guess, from keeping the eclipse god from coming and eating everybody. I don't really know
Yeah,
what
that's
part of it was.
pretty wild, some of the stuff that they did down there, and they built on to the ancient city, right? That was already there, the Mayans, or
A couple of times.
yeah, and the Aztecs, and so the Aztecs took over the Mayan place that they had taken over from somebody else or found
Olmecs.
abounded for the Olmecs, yeah. So it's changed hands a bunch of times, but the mythology has stayed very similar. It's just that depends on what they decide to do with it. Apparently, the Aztecs had this god, or the Mayans had this god Quetzalcoatl, who was a European appearing person with a beard who came over in a boat without paddles that was symbolized with a feathered serpent, and that his boat appeared to move, with serpents on the waves. And he brought over the knowledge of how to farm and how to build, and the knowledge of astronomy and advanced mathematics. And he's encoded into the artwork at this pyramid the different
Is he the dude
cultures.
that's like laying down with all the levers?
I don't know. He looks like he's fleeing from a catastrophe. It looks like there's a volcano or an explosion in his village on an island, and it shows him, coming over to the island on the boat with the serpents under it. And this is in the mythology too, but again, it's gone through probably different iterations with different cultures. Yeah,
because Chichen Itza's a snake pyramid.
well, they theorize, Randall Carlson and Graham Hancock in the final episode. Spoiler alert if you haven't watched it yet. I mean, you can probably see that this is what they're leading to. But they theorize that the Taurid meteor shower is part of a large comet, which had a big part of it break off and hit Earth, probably between 11,600 and 1,200 or 12,800 BC. Which caused the polar ice caps to melt, flood the Earth, which is why we have the flood myth in all different creation stories. And all over the world, we have the story of the flood. All over the world, we have evidence of there being a flood. So, this is one explanation for why. I would also explain why there would be no geological evidence, because the polar ice caps were melted by these comet strikes. And in some places, you do see layers of what they call the black zone or something like that, and it's a layer, the black layer. It's a layer which has things like iodine and platinum in it, which is not things you typically see in large amounts on the surface of the Earth or near the surface of the Earth, and it would have been there in the case that a object created at the beginning of the solar system, such as a comet, could contain those materials and would leave behind a residue like that if it hits. Not saying necessarily that it did, but that's one possibility.
Mud floods. We could do a whole episode on that one, because I feel like
Didn't we already talk about this?
Yeah. We talked about it with the World Fair. So
yeah, we've talked about. Well, yeah. To be fair, we've not really.
Yeah, we can definitely hit some of these things again.
Yeah, like the mud flood one, I think it's muddied, because sometimes they include, like always happens in the alternative history world, sometimes stuff gets conflated into it and it completely sinks the whole. Like, it sinks the momentum of having any truth to something, because people start using dumb examples. Like, they'll want to use examples like the buildings that have the small windows so you can see out. Like, they would try to say this is a mud flood house if this was made of stone,
right,
for example. But there are some pretty weird ones. Like, you'll find stuff that look like it's buried. It's like they'll call that a mound, and it's like, actually, I think this place was just buried by a big load of mud. And I think a lot of what they are calling the mud flood is probably from this big flood that you're talking about, that Graham Hancock talks about. Randall Carlson was the one that talks about the flooding the most, because he does like a topographic view of the Earth and shows you kind of how all the dirt that's kind of in the Midwest originally was up in Canada, and how the Colorado River, there's no way in hell that thing carved itself, even given the amount of time that the historians, 65 million years. It's like, I still don't think that little thing causes this big ass trench. But if you equate massive amounts of water running very, very fast, it would carve it a lot quicker, is their theory. Hot girls for you, just for me? Man. No girls for everybody else, just us.
Bill says something was just unearthed under somewhere. Yeah, and there's all the time she can't remember where, but there's all the time new discoveries happening, all the time new structures being uncovered. Do you ever hear the story of the gold books under the river down there in South America or something like that? A guy, he claimed to have swum under a river and come into a cave that had a bunch of gold-plated books or something like that. Did you ever hear anything about that?
Sounds vaguely familiar. When you say gold-plated books, I automatically think of Mormons.
I was hoping you might understand or might have some kind of knowledge on what that was, because I didn't remember. It's been a long time since I heard anything about it.
Have you ever seen the Emerald Tablets of Thoth? You ever seen those?
Mm-mm.
Like, it's an actual weird little book, and they're tablets. Like, it's got Thoth writing on it. Like it's not material they didn't have already. It's just a very absurd artifact to find.
While Bluff Screamer says there's also Usolo Horizon, a layer of ashes found around the same depth around the world. Yeah, I think that might be part of this other thing that they're talking about.
I really, Sean, if you're more interested, I mean, the Netflix one is very digestible, I'd say. And
Yeah.
I'm not saying that's
It's a
bad.
good introduction.
I've just not watched it because I know everything they keep bringing up. It's just better presented.
Mm-hmm.
I think some of the best material you could find is when Rogan had him and Carlson on. Randall Carlson and Graham Hancock came on together.
Yeah.
And they just kind of went over it, and Graham Hancock Randall Carlson goes over and just shows you the topographic evidence of this is probably where this thing hit. And once he starts showing you all of it, you're like, oh, this makes total sense.
Are you talking
Like,
about the most recent one or the one they did a couple
Probably-
years ago?
I think the one I saw was like 2016 or 2015 even.
Yeah, they've got several appearances on the show together, and they go over a lot of this stuff. And actually, Rogan ends up being in the finale of it. Yeah, check it out for sure, Sean. It's very interesting.
It is interesting, yeah. Because you don't have to believe in aliens, you don't have to believe in a lot of stuff, but the more you look at that, you're like, yeah, we got hit by some stuff, and I think the fact that every culture having a flood myth should have been evidence that there was a flood, but 400 sunken cities that they show,
Yeah.
it's just crazy. It's like, yeah, why would we ever deny there was a flood?
And you imagine what regular wind or air erosion and rain erosion does to a structure. Think about if something was under the sea. There's a few think about the amount of undersea cities there are, and think about the amount of damage that would have done to a modern city made of steel and concrete and glass, and you subject that to ocean tides and waves on a regular basis. There's going to be nothing left of it.
It's pretty wild too. The ones in Japan, I want to say it's off the coast of like China and Japan.
There is
that
one
has
off the
like,
coast of
It has
Japan.
like the Egyptian bulls with the solar symbols and stuff, and it's like that's out of place. That's there's an out of place artifact. That's an out of place city.
Yeah, and there's several of those, and like I said, these spots are all over the world, and they all have very similar myths. Which, it's hard to say that they're lying. I mean, they may be telling it in a different way, but they're all pretty much saying the same thing. And if you go to even Plato, which is the first mention that we know of Atlantis, I think he had one of his relatives, his ancestor. How many thousand? It would have been 10,000 years before Plato was alive, that he would have had to have gone to Atlantis. But that's our first mention of it, and that's where we get our location of it, is 10,000 years after the fact by Plato, whose ancestor went. So it's understandable that the idea of the city may have lived on, but it would be pretty hard to pass on that exact location. It would have been pretty hard to pass on exactly what they meant by a great city with technology. And
Pretty sure there's a reference, and there's like a whole temple in Egypt where there's a story about Atlantis written on the wall or something.
I think they did find something about it recently, but I think that's the first that they reckon could be
Think
it.
about that if Plato was a Appalachian redneck and be like, my great 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 grandpappy.
Old
Wait.
Pappy Atlanta.
He went
Atlantis.
He went down and he went to this place, and I swear to God, he went and he waved his hand, or he didn't have to wave his hand. He walked up, the door opened automatically for him.
could
He
see
walked
through that
right
door,
in.
too.
You could see right through the door. There was all kind of people there to serve you. They'd bring you whatever you want to help you find it. They had the best food. They had all kinds of array of fancy devices to let
They ate
you
chicken
talk
every
to
day of the
people
week.
across the way. Yep. They had hot food right there and didn't even have a fire. I mean, I can see it. Do you think about what we have today? If somebody was able to pass knowledge of that down to, if somehow our society was destroyed, I mean, we would definitely have reached Atlantis status.
Oh, well, even this computer would be too hard for a genius like 200 years ago to even fathom. Like this would look like. Well, this is pretty advanced technology. I just think, what is our hang up with thinking that this stuff could have existed before? Like, I guess that's my issue with the whole argument over like ancient tech and out of place artifacts. It's like, why do people have such a hard time thinking that we could have done this stuff more than once?
Yeah, and they like to say that there's not really any evidence for it, and it's like, well, Yeah, but you speculate on everything else. Why are we not allowed to speculate in that direction? Like every other kind of speculation is allowed except for that. It almost makes me think that you think that and you don't want us to think that.
I think maybe it scares people.
Yeah.
The idea that we could have been doing this for a really long time, and that maybe there's never going to be a time where it's perfect, because that's the implication. Like, we've been doing this humans have been here for hundreds of thousands of years in actuality, and we've still not got a utopia.
We probably make it to this point regularly and then it all goes to pieces.
Or we just keep eating ourselves, and it's never been a utopia, and it's never
That's
gotten
what
to
I'm
that
saying.
point.
I think it gets to like this point and then we end it.
We get to points like, because this technology that we have is pretty easy to wipe out with stuff like some of the massive solar flares that they recorded throughout history. So it's like, basically it gives a big EMP, hey, we're back to several hundred years ago.
Well, you think about how many people actually know how this works. Nobody. It'd be hard for you to. Well, I mean, you could do it, but you could build like a toaster or something like that with basic electronic knowledge. But that'd be about as far as you could go. You couldn't build a computer by yourself, even if you're a programmer. So you think about all this stuff goes away. How are you going to rebuild it? How many?
You have to make a motherboard from scratch.
Yeah.
I don't know. It's like you can't make a modern motherboard by hand like that.
It takes a specialized production facility.
You have all those tiny little bus lines that everything goes through, and if you you do that, touch it, you fry it from static.
How many people that build computers even know? I mean, I'm saying this naively because I know people that build computers. Do people that build computers know how to make a hard drive? Do they really know how all that stuff works? Like
No, they know.
microchips,
No, they know how to order a microchip and order a hard drive, and it's not like nobody can know how to do all of it. I mean, it takes, like Dustin was saying, it takes a specialized production facility, specialized programs, robots now that probably use artificial intelligence to solder these things together on the nano scale because they're so small now. Microchips and processors. There's no way, if we lost the knowledge we have right now, there's no way we could just rebuild it. And even just the
manufacturing ability, even to make chips and stuff like that, because there's only that's why we had such a chip shortage for the whole pandemic, because there's 3 places in the world that make them.
No. Which I don't want to give Joe Biden credit or anything, but it does appear that we're starting to make those in the United States, and Biden did push for that. So I don't know that.
Did he?
Yeah.
Did he personally do it? Or
He personally, he personally did push for it, but who knows who told him to do that. At any rate, it's
follow the money. Figure out who wants to make money off making microchips.
Well, I mean, it seems to be more of a nationalist position than I would expect him to take, because it does allow the United States to bring their microchip production at home, so they're not dependent on other nations for them. So whether you want to give Biden credit for that or not, I don't know that I necessarily do. It does seem like it's a good thing to produce those here rather than in China and be at the whims of the Chinese. So it does seem that there's at least some sort of, semblance of semi-nationalism going on between the two companies. They're not, or the two countries. I said two companies. That's probably more appropriate. They're not completely fully merged yet, because there is still some sort of back and forth going on there, is what that appears to be.
Speaking of ancient places that haven't been really looked into, China. They've got a lot of stuff, and they just won't. I don't know if they're not interested in it. They're more interested in because I think maybe that might be some of it is the natives in China. They seem to have a very big insecurity about their place in the world, and that's why they're so motivated to, increase the status of China, because China's had it's kind of been picked on quite a bit in history, and that's kind of the world. If China ever decided to go to war with the world kind of created that situation by picking on China so much. But I think maybe that's why they don't care about some of the ancient stuff they've got. They've got megaliths out the ass, but it's out in the middle of the desert, because I guess China, you think of mostly rice fields and technology, but most of China is a giant desert.
When was the Great Wall built?
I have no clue.
Let's look it up.
They go into the idea that the Mongols were somehow related to the Vikings, though. That was somebody's theory, that because the Vikings.
Well, they sure did have a similar culture, didn't they?
Well, the Vikings didn't just pillage.
220 BC.
when they found a society that they didn't want to completely destroy, they didn't. They went and enjoyed it like a rock star, boned all their women, and then they left to go destroy something that wasn't as cool.
Well, I guess, and that's what the Mongols did too. Didn't they say like 1 out of every 16 people on the earth is descended from Genghis Khan, something like that?
Guy got around.
Let's see. But yeah, you saw those buried Chinese cultures in movies like that. What was The Mummy? One of the Mummy movies where they showed the buried warriors underneath the underground in China, like the city of the buried warrior statues. That was a real thing.
The terracotta.
Terracotta.
Yeah.
soldiers. Yeah. It was on the tip of my tongue.
Yeah, how old were those guys?
What's even crazy about that is
The one that turns down.
like allegedly there's like a pool of mercury or something in one of those tombs.
Oh, it's 1 in 200 of people.
1 in 200. That's still quite a bit.
Yeah.
They said that most everyone has some level of Viking in them.
0.5% of men in the world are, about 16 million individuals are descended from Genghis Khan, according to Discover magazine.
That's 2010. I wonder if Ancestry's going to do any cleaning up on that.
Let's see. Here's IFL Science fact check. No thanks. Let's see if I have anything else. Yeah, so it was from 2004 they did that study, so who knows now.
I wonder if it's well, I guess when you're a leader and you have 1,900 wives and 200 concubines, I wonder if they could do a DNA search on Solomon, they'd probably find just as much, you know.
Interesting. Yeah, if they, I don't know when was Solomon supposed to have existed? What, like 4,500 years ago?
That's a good one. You'd think I'd know that since I've read all 3 of his books. Yeah, that's
I don't know either. I think that's probably about right, but I'm not sure about that. That's where everything seems to revolve around temporally in a lot of the mythology is about 2,500 years BC. That's where, the Egyptian pyramids and the Sphinx were supposedly built. A lot of stuff apparently going on during then.
Well, they bring up Solomon with like magic a lot too, and I'm wondering if that magic wasn't just technology he had privy to.
Yeah.
Yeah. Because
I've said that a lot. It's like,
and summoning demons, he could just be calling up he could be asking an AI question. He could be pulling up he could ask an AI question, have a hologram come out and read in the answer. You think about that technology, and it would have a symbol that it appeared out of that was in a certain shape, and people tried to copy the symbols. That could have just been the pattern left by the holograph machine or whatever.
Transmutation.
It could have been, an old version of Wikipedia, just with like a holographic AI assistant reading you the answers or showing you.
The little clippy guy from Microsoft Word.
Yeah.
Your little digital assistant.
Of course, then again, he probably could just been doing acid or something like that. So a lot of people think that with the burning bush and Moses, when he talked to a burning bush, he was just smoking DMT.
Yeah, I guess that could have been
sense. That's a good analogy you said that way.
Talking to the burning bush.
It turns out Hebrew doesn't translate very easily over into English, and it's like it was a Hebrew historian, he was explaining how like the Hebrew language is more flowery when you translate it into the English language, and that it doesn't come out that way in Hebrew though. And like he could totally see how a long time ago when they were trying to talk about how him smoking a pile of acacia roots would be like talking to a burning bush. Like there would be some mistranslation there.
Well, yeah, and especially if somebody saw him doing it and he was just toking it up and then starts talking,
Air comes down. Well, that makes sense. Like he was trying to figure out how to get these crazy people under control. Like, oh god, they keep doing this crazy stuff. And he comes down with 10 rules. All right, guys. God told me y'all can't kill each other, number 1. That's got to stop now. Number 2, stop lying.
Get rid of all these golden cows everywhere.
Wonder what the golden cows were.
Well, they said he came down off the Temple Mount and his face was glowing so brightly people couldn't lit upon it. What if that was just their way, the Hebrews' way of saying he was hella lit?
Yeah. Well, I mean, but what do you think the golden calves were just an idol to worship, or do you think that they were actually maybe a piece of technology of some sort? Do you think that they, where do you fall in on, the Ark of the Covenant. Do you think these things could have been ancient
Ark
technology
of
of
the
some
Covenant,
sort?
I think probably. It's some sort of nuclear reactor.
Think so? The
Mm-hmm.
Ethiopians claim that there was more than one. Yeah. They said that they've got one of them.
Now, the History Channel claimed on one of their Ancient Alien episodes that there was a story of Ethiopia carrying the Ark of the Covenant into battle and emerging victoriously, I think, against the Germans in World War II. Now, I don't know if that's true, but that's something that I heard
Well,
on
as
there.
Hebrews, that's what they would do. That's what they're instructed to do, is carry their ark into battle. But, like, it makes sense if you think of it from ancient tech, because you would have to. Because that would, I don't know if it was like a Gears of War reference, if it was like a fabricator or something. But, like, I don't know, what do you think it would be that you, like, because it seems like if you had, like, a box, like, I don't know how big size this table maybe, what could you possibly put in there?
I mean, a smart rocket launcher would inspire a lot of awe.
You think so?
I mean, I'm just saying there's a lot of things that it could be.
Get the bazooka.
Yep, I mean,
Get the ark, and it's just got AKs in it. I don't even know how they work. Push the kill button.
they definitely remember that. They would definitely ascribe it to memory. So, all right. Well, listen, this is one of those we could go on all night about. There's a lot of different sites with a lot of different archaeological evidence and a lot of different theories on what they could be. We're just having a lot of fun here. There's a lot to talk about. There's all kinds of research that's been done on it by guys that are smarter than us. We're just kind of standing on the shoulders of giants, as it were, and playing around in their findings and, just happy to step in their sandbox.
We need to get an Ethiopian Bible. That would be interesting. It's got 88 books in it. So I've not read those other ones. I know I've read a couple of them, like Enoch or whatever. But there's a lot of them I've not taken. I don't even know what they are.
I feel like the story of the book of what's his name? Judas didn't really make a lot of waves like you would think it would have.
The traitor?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
I mean, they said they found it, it was about 2012 or something like
Oh,
that?
you mean the Book of Judas?
Yeah.
Yeah, I've not read that one.
Yeah, so, I mean, it supposedly brings, and I've always had like a little bit of sympathy for Judas, and because in the Bible story it was always that, it was God's plan for him to be betrayed. Like, so, well, somebody has to betray him. Why does everybody hate Judas? If that's God's plan and it won't work without a betrayer, how does Judas really help that? And then apparently the book of Judas makes him more of a sympathetic figure, but it makes it, it kind of brings up the idea that there was a plot, to set this into motion, and that there Jesus's his disciples were basically playing the political game, trying to
They use
use it to their advantage, kind of, that they were, they all knew it had to happen, and how were they going to use it to their benefit, kind of thing. But I've not read it myself. I'm just going off.
I know the Quran
There's
says
also-
Jesus didn't die.
There's also a thing in the book of Judas that kind of pretty much plays out that the Jewish God is a different God from what Jesus is.
Gnosticism, I mean.
Yeah, and I've always thought that was different.
It's like they were like, I forgot how the verse went. It was something with God. He's like, that's not my God.
Nah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, so
It's like, it seemed like, like the Old Testament God, he was kind of an asshole.
yeah, and I saw a breakdown on it. It was like Yahweh was like a really vengeful God, and then Jehovah was like a different version. He was a jealous God, but not as vengeful or something. But I don't remember all the details of that.
According to
But apparently they were in standard biblical lore. Those are all the same person, or it's all the same God. But some people say it may be different.
the original Christianity, as bad as it sounds, I don't want to offend anybody. It was called Gnosticism. It was Gnostic Jews, and their form of it was not to be too or just to be too long, that there was spirits, and you're not and like that. All these great gods and stuff had the ability to create things, but one of them accidentally gave birth to a world, and it was this one. And that was Yahweh. And this whole time, the reason God seems to get nicer as it goes on is because he was a child. And when they first found the earth, the Gnostic gods found the earth, they were mortified to find that he had created all this life. And so all these attempts to get humans into a better state has just been the original gods feeling sympathy for us because we were never supposed to exist to begin with.
Interesting. Now, where was it? This is Gnostic.
It's Gnostic
Judaism.
Gnosticism. Just
Okay.
acknowledge
Gnosticism in general.
And they that was the original part of it, that Yahweh was not really God. He was God of this planet and not the whole universe. So that's the reason that you kind of like almost like when you start reading it that way, you kind of have an air of sympathy for him because they're like, yeah, of course, if you were God, you'd be awful in the beginning. I would too. Everybody would.
Takes practice.
Yeah, it takes practice.
Like you think it's hard learning to be an assistant manager? Imagine exactly. Learning to be God.
Imagine that power going to your head to wake up as a 2-year-old and you're like, I can make baby chickens and then I can kill them. So.
Wild Bluff Scrimmage's Trump hair was in the ark. Yeah, we made the the Fibonacci sequence, the fractal sequence that's formed when you put graph out the Fibonacci sequence. Yeah, so that's yet another one of those interesting little connections. Hey, Lo, let's end it for tonight. It's been a lively discussion. We got to hit a lot of the different stuff on it, and there's a lot we could talk about it more on it. So maybe we'll revisit it another time. Again. There's only so many people tuning in for these things. So, when we keep going, maybe we'll repeat some of this stuff and get into a deeper part of it.
Aliens will probe on.
Yeah.
That's what we can do. We can anal probe Goth on YouTube. He'd be the first live probed person.
He wouldn't be the first. He wouldn't be the first. He'd be probably the first.
Well, I'm not getting probed. And
Abrahamic God says miss you too. Thank you. Dan gives them the thumbs down. Yeah. Yeah, they were not real nice on a lot of ways. They were jealous and spiteful and destroyed a lot of things. And it seemed like they were full of wrath. Their wrath was mentioned a lot.
They wanted your wieners.
Yeah, that too. That's why they got the cameras out. It's Yahweh's revenge, the wiener camera.
Let's see how many people are still cutting their foreskins off. I don't believe enough people are doing it. That's the one thing he's hung up on. Y'all can be gay. Y'all go back to killing each other. I don't care. Leave the foreskin or cut it off and feed it to me.
Jesus. Oh, excuse me. Oh man. All right, well, I appreciate you sticking with us through all our craziness. I hope you enjoyed it, and we want to hear your craziness too. Not y'all, and not spill the tea, not miss you too. Hey, everybody, so tune in Wednesday. We'll do the news and current events roundup. Me and Tim. Hopefully, I'll have. If I don't find my earbuds, I'll just use and give some different ones or something. Man, I lost my good earbuds. I hate that. Anyway, hey, see you Wednesday night.